MotoTribe. I'm Laura Kraft.
Anna Rigby.
Emily Prince.
Sarah Merrell.
And we are MotoTribe. Today we're going to be talking about gear. Riding is risky, and so we're each going to talk about what kind of gear we wear and why, and kind of the evolution of that, of why we've decided to choose certain things over other things. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Anna to explain to us her choices in riding gear.
When I started riding about 10 years ago, there really wasn't much gear for women. It was hard to find anything. And honestly, when you start riding, nobody really tells you, what you need to wear, what you shouldn't wear and why. My first time on a motorcycle, I was just in jeans and a t-shirt and a helmet. In my state, in Georgia, helmets are mandatory, so that was never a question. But quite frankly, it's definitely something I would have always worn. I have been up in New Hampshire and other states where helmets are not mandatory, and I have worn them there. Your head is the most important part of your body. Without it, you can't function. So it's just a risk that, I'm not willing to take. But I started riding, and I think about a month into riding, I invested in some Kevlar pants and a simple leather jacket. And I remember going up to the mountains with my husband, and he actually had a low side. It wasn't a really fast crash. I think he was probably only doing 40 miles an hour. It was in a really tight corner. He ended up sliding off the road and into a berm and hit his shoulder on a side of a mountain. So he hit hard rock. He was wearing a leather jacket with armor protection, which completely protected him. I mean, he had maybe a small bruise, no broken bones. However, his leg got really rashed up. He had pretty big road rash because he was in Kevlar pants, and they just shredded after a little bit. Well, after seeing what he went through and then seeing the weeks and weeks of healing and the complications and just the festering wound, I was like, holy cow, like, I want to protect my body if I'm going to be riding up here, because I'm completely inexperienced. I don't know what I'm doing. And top that off, I'm accident prone. So this is going to happen eventually to me too. So I started looking into, what's available out there. It was really hard to find stuff. I'm really tall. I have really long legs and a long torso. So a lot of the stuff off the shelf didn't fit me. So I had to start looking into custom made suits. I did a little bit better with two-piece leather suits, but I didn't find them as comfortable as I found the custom suits. Just, a lot more form-fitting, less fabric in the waist. So for me, it was a better choice. For commuting, I went with some Kevlar jeans, and, I have several leather jackets, but another thing I always like to wear is a back protector. I mean, even in, impact on the street, if you get hit by a car, that's a really big one, really important element to protect is your spine.
That makes a lot of sense. I know when I first started riding, some of the advice I was given was some jeans, have some boots that go over your ankles, get some gloves on. You can even use like gardening gloves. Make sure you have a hat, or make sure you have a helmet. Or not garden. Make sure we have a helmet, and you're good to go. And so, for me, I didn't have good motorcycle gear for at least the first year, 2 years. My first jacket that I would wear was actually just a fashion leather jacket. I didn't know where motorcycle stores existed. So there wasn't gear for me. And then when I did learn about it, I realized that there are very, very few options for women. So my first jacket was this big, bulky men's jacket that I kind of like tightened around me as much as I could to make it form fitting. But I think gear's come a long way. And especially for women and online places, Revzilla or wherever else may be, that you can get gear pretty quickly and tailored for women's bodies. Sarah, I know you've been riding a long time, so tell us about your gear evolution.
I think I have a similar story to Anna. I started out in jeans. I did have a leather jacket and I had gloves and I got boots pretty much right off the bat. And I was prepared with that, but I still wore jeans. And it wasn't until the day that I had a fall down while learning in the parking lot. And my husband had to pick all the pavement out of my knees and then scrub it out. It was really, really uncomfortable. So after that, I ended up getting some leather pants that had knee padding in them. And that was extremely helpful, of course. And so on the road after that experience, I always made sure that I had some sort of knee protection, kept wearing my riding boots that offered full protection, and a leather jacket that had armor in it, my helmet, my gloves. And so I always wear that after that experience. And even when you're wearing gear, I had an experience during the MSF actually, where I had a fall down and I had a 3rd-degree sprain on my ankle, and that was with motorcycle boots. And so if I had not been wearing those boots, I definitely would have broken that ankle, if not ended up with pins in my ankle. So it really saved me. But, even though I started wearing gear all the time when I rode and eventually got a leather suit, we all make mistakes sometimes. And one day, actually, this was last year, very recent, I thought I'm just on my little Z125. I was at Deals Gap Motorcycle Resort. I was like, I'm just going to go down the road, which was less than a mile, maybe half a mile from there, down a little gravel road. And so I just thought to myself, I don't need to throw gear on. I'm not going far. This is my home turf. And so I didn't put on anything. I had on leggings, sneakers, I think a tank top, no helmet, no gloves, no boots, no nothing. And I couldn't have been going more than 25, 30 miles an hour. And it was just one of those instances where I wasn't paying attention and my hat flew off my head. I was trying to grab it, hit a spot of gravel and just wrecked right there, and ended up hitting my head on the ground and had a concussion. I had cuts and scrapes and bruises all over me. I messed up my knee. This was probably last fall, and I'm still having issues with my knee. And so even just scooting over real quick somewhere, if you're not wearing gear and you're not wearing a helmet, it can be bad. And I was very lucky that my head hit the gravel road and it didn't hit a rock, because that could have been even worse. I was in a remote area and no one would have found me for a while. So that was a lesson to me. And ever since then, even if I'm just scooting down the road, I throw on a helmet, I throw on at least some kind of protective jacket. I make sure I've got my boots on, my gloves on, all of that. And that was a mistake that I learned from. And so if I was injured that badly on a little gravel road, on a little bike, imagine what can happen at higher speeds.
Emily, let's hear your story. I know you have some.
Oh yeah. I guess I'm very lucky in that I didn't start riding until a few years ago, because when I started, there was actually a good bit of gear available for female riders. And there were a lot of, motorcycle influencers out there that I could watch their channels, turn to their pages and see what their recommendations were. So when I actually went to take the MSF course, I showed up, I already had Kevlar jeans, I had motorcycle boots. They were like the street boots or whatever, kind of like high tops, but with protected ankles and, pretty solid, sturdy boots. I had a mesh jacket that had armor in it. And, I felt like that was enough protection for what I was doing at the time. And so it's kind of funny because I had the opposite experience, like starting riding, I think, 36 when I first set foot on a motorcycle. And so I was like overly cautious, and I started out, I would never even get on the bike without wearing like long pants that had Kevlar and knee pads, and at least the like textile jacket that had the armor in it, always had my full face jacket, always had the gloves, the boots, like, and as the years went on, I kind of incrementally got more protective gear, but I always wore something. There was always some sort of protective gear on because I was so paranoid that I was going to go down like on a back road near my house and, get hurt. So I started overly cautious, but I did not move up to getting leather gear until I started looking at like going to the track. Up until then, every time I went up to the mountains, I was wearing like textile pants, and they had like knee pads and kind of hip protection, and then a textile jacket. Because let's be real, like we live in Georgia, and a lot of the days when I was out riding, it was like in the 90s. And so I was like, I can't imagine wearing leather. Like I would be so hot. And, luckily at the time I was kind of going at a cruising pace. So I didn't put it together that I could still get hurt even at those slow paces. So I'm very lucky I did not. But now, after years of riding and after being on track and after, I have expensive, nice leather gear that's very protective, I'm going to wear it. I would absolutely be so embarrassed and, upset if I ended up hurting myself in a crash because I was not wearing my gear. I will take that and go straight into my recent story where I crashed about 7 weeks ago. And being the experienced rider that I consider myself, I always gear up. I'm always like, if I'm going up to the mountains, if I'm going to the track, if I'm going to push it at all, head to toe gear. I was going to the gym. I decided to take a little kind of detour and, have some fun curvy roads that are right around my house. Seriously, like maybe 5 miles tops from my house. And so I threw on, like I was wearing my workout clothes, I threw on my Kevlar jeans and a leather jacket and had my little backpack I wear to the gym, my helmet, my gauntlet gloves, my full like race boots. And I ended up low siding because I had cold tires and was going too fast for the conditions. And my Kevlar jeans, they ripped. Like my knee hit the pavement, got ground into the pavement. I wound up with a big hole in my knee and a big chunk of skin where I had road rash. And I slid about 100 feet across the pavement. The Kevlar protected my butt. So I am so thankful that I was wearing the Kevlar, because if I was not, I would be missing skin about this much on my rear end, because you can see in the jeans, it's like shredded this big. So thank God I actually had on the Kevlar jeans, because that could have been a much worse situation. My leather jacket got just torn to shreds. I mean, it is absolutely everywhere. The seams are bursting, the leather's shredded. But I had not a single mark on my upper body. Like not a bruise, not a cut, not a scratch, nothing. And my helmet hit the ground. So if I had not been wearing a helmet, I would have hit my head on the ground. My gloves got torn up. So all the way all along here, both sides, my hands were on the ground. My boots got scraped up on both sides. I mean, literally everywhere, every piece of gear that I was wearing got completely destroyed. And had I not been wearing it, that would have been my skin. And so I learned one solid lesson from this recent incident, and that is never go full send without full gear. And that, I mean, if you're just cruising around town, I still go to the gym and I wear jeans, but I don't push it. I'm just cruising. I'm going slow. I learned that lesson the hard way.
Yeah.
And even then, you just don't know. I do the same thing. I am guilty of commuting to work in jeans and a leather jacket and like sneakers or somewhat protective gear, but not my race boots and stuff. And like, low gloves. Mm-hmm. And I always like think about that too, because it's like, the jeans aren't going to protect me at all. And the worst thing is, even though I could be wearing Kevlar jeans and stuff like that, but also how you slide. I had a friend who slid and, her jacket slid up. So she got road rash on her stomach and her back, so I was like thinking about that and I'm like, man, we still take those risks sometimes. And like what you said, it's like I try to, like, at that point when I'm not in full gear, I really try, like, I'm not going anything over the speed limit. I'm super cautious, but that's still not a guarantee. I can still hit gravel. I can still be hit by a car. So you just never know. So it really comes down to that risk. Like, are you willing to take it? And what is it worth to you? Because, you know, a lot of people say gear is expensive, and it is. I'm not going to lie. It's very expensive. But do you know how much medical bills cost? Because, yeah, getting admitted into the ER, ooh, that's not a
Life
fun time.
flight, if you have
Yeah,
to
life
take the
flight.
helicopter ride, and let me
Yeah.
tell you how expensive that is. Not that I know from experience, but I've heard it. I mean, it will break you for life. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like, you know, if I have the gear, I would be dumb not to use it. You know, just like I literally, if I had been wearing my leather suit when I crashed, I would probably not have been injured at all. So, you know, it took me seriously 7 weeks to be able to like not wear a band-aid on my knee. Like I'm finally
Mhm.
today, I think was the first day that I did not have to cover my knee.
And it was pretty gnarly because I was there to pick Emily up when she crashed. And
Thank
she
you.
definitely was in a little bit of shock. She was not a happy camper. So I can tell you, like, it's not a fun experience to watch her go through this at all.
Yeah.
Laura.
Yeah, so I just feel lucky. In my early years, I wasn't wearing gear. I mean, I was wearing jeans, I was wearing boots, but nothing motorcycle like protection gear. And so I think I was really lucky that I didn't have any downs in those years. Otherwise, things could have been really bad. But I will say that I learned to get leather, and I wear leather all the time. I mean, it's very rare that I'm not wearing leather. Occasionally I wear my protective jeans that have knee pads and it's Kevlar. But otherwise, I mean, I almost feel naked if I don't have my leather on. If I hop on my bike and I'm like, oh, I've got my jeans on, even my jeans, I'm like, this just feels strange. Like it's a little unnerving. I think once you get used to it, that's what you want. That makes you feel comfortable. Although it's not bulletproof, but it just makes you feel comfortable that you have that protection on, that, if you were to go down, that, the leather is there, and your helmet and your boots and whatever else. And it hopefully saves you from having to go to the hospital or whatever else may happen.
Yeah, it is a bigger peace of mind. I mean, that's true. And so my sister-in-law is an ER doctor, and she sees a lot of stuff. And she was telling me one of the biggest things is mitigating risks of how much damage your body can sustain. It's about lowering the damage over your entire body. You want to lower the trauma and just, get a bunch of smaller injuries is a lot better than like two really traumatic injuries, which can happen when you're not wearing gear. And same thing with road rash. If you get a lot of road rash over your entire body, your body goes into shock, into trauma, and it doesn't heal as well as if you had smaller amounts of it. I mean, it seems common sense, but it's really stuff we're not taught, that we don't really think about, even when, you just get on a bike and you see other people. There's plenty of people that don't wear gear, so you just don't know any better. I think I know when I was starting out, I didn't know any better. But it's like funny, the opposite of Emily's story. I had a crash last year in the mountains due to cold tires as well. I was being really dumb because I knew better, but I was fully geared up to the gills, and I low-sided at about 55. Went sliding across the pavement, bike went into the ditch, and I jumped up and I was fine. Like at first I was like, oh, we're good. Like I didn't even bruise. I mean, I was already leaned over so much to the, close to the ground that I just kind of slid. But if I didn't have leathers on, I mean, that would have been road rash central. So, and I did hit my head. Again, my leather hump protected me from my head slamming into the pavement, and, the helmet did its job too. So, I mean, I'm thankful that up there, at least I know if I'm going to be riding aggressive, I'm going to gear up. I know, Sarah, you have a similar story.
That's true, because I had a cold tire incident on the Dragon. I had on my leather suit, helmet, gloves, boots, whole 9 yards. And it was like I crashed and got up. Bike was fine. I was fine. And no road rash, no broken bones, nothing bad. But the reason why I was okay and I walked away from it was because I had really good gear on, as opposed to the other times when I didn't. Because what I found was the impact on the body when you're hitting that pavement, even at lower speeds, it's hard. It is hard on the body. It's a big impact. It's pavement. There's no give to it. There's nothing to compare when having gear that helps absorb a lot of that impact. And so I'm really happy that I ended up going that direction. And I don't know about you girls, but I have people ask me a lot when I'm on my bike and in the parking lot and I'm in full gear and it's July and it's hot. And people will say, they'll kind of be like, aren't you hot? How can you wear all that? You must be sweating. And it's like, yeah, it's hot, but it's a lot better than being skinned alive.
Coming from my recent experience, I mean, I literally had a patch that was about this big on my knee of road rash. And let me tell you how painful that is. Like, I was amazed. I was thinking, oh, it's just a skinned knee. Oh no, like it's totally different than just scraping the skin off. Like it is, you have no skin left. And I mean, every time I bent my knee for like 6 weeks, it hurt. And I'm like, I can't imagine what it would be like to have like a big patch of it on your skin, how excruciating that would be. I'm like, never. Like, if I can avoid that, absolutely. And I have a funny story. I was actually talking to someone at my gym recently, and he had this question for me because we were talking about gear. And he asked me about like, oh, you always wear leather. Like, why is that? And I was like, well, okay, so think of it this way. If you're in a truck going down the highway and say you're going like, I don't know, even if you're going low speeds, because, okay, we're cruising around town going like 30, 45 miles per hour. You're in a t-shirt and shorts, and I tell you, okay, we get up to 30, 45 miles an hour, jump out. Jump out. Just jump out of the bed of the truck. Would you do it? You know, I mean, okay. Now, if you have on leather gear, you're going to feel a little better about that jumping out of the truck. You know, it's like that, because it is. You're hitting the ground. On a bike, you're going that same speed like you would be in a car. You're not going to jump out of a car going that fast and like feel safe hitting the ground. So why would you not protect your skin from that situation? If you're being forced out, I'm like, yeah, no, cover me. Like, wrap me in bubble wrap. Let's go.
I actually have a story to follow that up too that I just came to my mind. A year and a half into my riding, I was up in the mountains and I was still figuring out my gear situation. I did have a leather suit on, but it was not a very good quality leather suit. The armor wasn't quite right in it. And I had boots, but they weren't really well protected. They were more of a sport touring boot, which, I thought was totally fine. And again, let me preface this with every crash is different. Things are different depending on the situation always. But I had a extremely low speed fall over. I don't even want to call it a crash. I think I was doing like 15 miles an hour. I was actually moving the bike, coming off of going high speeds and coming off to a turnaround. And my front wheel hit gravel and I was inexperienced. And I was still using the front brake and I tucked the front. The problem is because I was going so slow, I tucked the front so violently, the bike slammed me down and I was trying to protect it because it was my baby, which is dumb. Well, it crushed my foot. It actually broke my toe. I had to ride home. Fortunately, the bike was still rideable, but I had a really tweaked neck. My head hit the pavement really hard. I saw stars. I did not get a concussion, so, that worked. But I did have a broken shifter toe. Fast forward about 5 years on track, I had a really gnarly crash. I would think I was doing slowed down to 70 miles an hour, and I had a front wheel lockup. It was a really weird situation I won't go into, but anyways, I face planted into the pavement at about 70 miles an hour in full gear and really properly armored gear. And the other thing I want to add is it's really important that your gear fits you properly. Because if it doesn't, if it's too big for you, that armored gear won't do anything. The armor will shift on the inside and it's not going to protect you. So I face planted and slid on my face, on my stomach, my toes, everything. And I do have photos of this to share with you guys. And my gear was trashed, but I was fine. I didn't break anything. It was amazing. I'm amazed to this day that all of my toes stayed intact because my boots are just shredded as I slid on my toes. So, I mean, that's also the importance of, what type of gear you're wearing for the type of riding you're doing. And, every fall is different.
So I think we all agree that gear is really vital to riding. I mean, it makes us feel comfortable when we're out there. Riding is not, it's not risk-free. And so it makes it just a tad less risky. And we all know of people that have been down, and if they've been down in leather, a lot of times they just pop right back up. You don't want to think that leather is bulletproof, but it does give a peace of mind. So I think with that, we should wrap this up. Are there any final thoughts that you ladies have? And maybe we should ask the audience to leave questions or leave comments around, is there a particular of gears that you want us to go into? Helmets, boots, one-piece suits, leather suits, jeans, whatever it may be. Let us know and we'd be happy to tackle that topic.
Amongst the four of us, I think we have years and years of gear testing experience. So for sure, I'm very happy to answer any gear related questions.
With that, thank you, ladies.
Thanks.